One night, the man who never stopped moving simply didn't wake up, and the silence he left behind raised more questions than answers. 4 years, his life had been a blur of airport terminals, motel parking lots, sunrise coffees, and late-night monologues spoken into a camera lens. He was always in motion, always going somewhere. If you followed him long enough, you stopped asking where he was headed, because the movement itself had become the point. For more than a decade, he was everywhere, crossing the United States in rental cars and airplanes, flying between continents with barely a pause to rest, live streaming regularly, smiling into the night, energized even when exhaustion should have caught up to him. He lived fast, but not recklessly, purposefully, as if time itself were something he was trying to outrun. Then, suddenly, Adam the Woo was gone. He passed away quietly in his sleep at just 51 years old. No warning. No dramatic collapse. No final message recorded for the camera. Just a still room. A locked door. And a man who, for the first time in his adult life, had stopped moving. Instead of immediate answers, the public was met with something unexpected, a celebration of life announced almost right away by his family. The tone was calm, gentle, almost peaceful. There were no public accusations, no visible panic, only gratitude, remembrance, and quiet acceptance. And that, somehow, unsettled people even more. Why would such a sudden, mysterious death be wrapped in optimism so quickly? Why did it feel as though everyone else had moved forward while the audience was still frozen in disbelief? To understand why fans struggled to let go, you have to understand what Adam represented. He wasn't just a traveler. He was proof that an ordinary person could choose an extraordinary path, and stick to it. He showed up, day after day, not polished or perfect, but present. His camera wasn't a shield. It was an invitation. So when the movement stopped, the absence felt personal. The day everything changed. On December 22, 2025, a fellow creator arrived at Adam's home to film a planned video. There was no response at the door. At first, it seemed like a simple scheduling mix-up. Adam was known for late nights and spontaneous plans. But minutes passed. Then longer. Concern slowly replaced impatience. Looking through an upstairs window, he saw Adam lying on his bed, still, peaceful, almost as if asleep. The room looked untouched. No chaos. No struggle. Just quiet. Police later confirmed that a wellness check had been attempted earlier, but all doors were locked. There were no signs of forced entry. Nothing appeared broken or disturbed. The scene was described as calm. Too calm. And in that stillness, questions began to grow. The autopsy took longer than expected. In cases involving common causes, heart attacks, strokes, answers usually come quickly. The delay became a vacuum, and into that vacuum poured speculation, theories, and grief disguised as curiosity. The timeline that didn't add up. Just one day earlier, Adam had uploaded a vlog filled with energy and warmth. He was celebrating the holiday season, reflecting on recent travels through Europe, Disneyland Paris, snow-covered streets, long walks under foreign skies. He looked happy, grounded, alive. Fans replayed the video, searching for signs they might have missed. A pause too long. A breath too shallow. A sentence that sounded like a goodbye. Years of non-stop travel came back into focus. Long-haul international flights. Irregular meals. Sleep stolen in fragments. A lifestyle built on momentum rather than rest. Online forums filled with theories, blood clots, stress, silent conditions that don't announce themselves until it's too late. Others revisited Adam's own words. After turning 50, he had spoken occasionally about mortality, about finishing a mission. At the time, it sounded reflective, thoughtful, almost poetic. In hindsight, it felt heavier. Some discussions drifted toward controversial territory, vaccines, unseen complications, hidden truths. But no evidence supported those claims. What remained undeniable was this: sometimes, even the strongest rhythms stop without explanation. And that's the hardest truth to accept. The legacy he left behind. Yet here's what grief often hides from us: silence does not erase impact. Adam's life was not defined by how it ended, but by how fully it was lived. He reminded people that curiosity matters. That wonder doesn't expire with age. That you don't need permission to start over, or to keep going. He didn't wait for someday. He filmed today. And in doing so, he quietly gave others permission to do the same. In the end, maybe the celebration of life wasn't premature. Maybe it was intentional. A final lesson from a man who understood that time is not promised, but meaning is chosen. He moved while he could. He shared while he could. And when the movement stopped, the story didn't. Because inspiration, once given, doesn't disappear. It keeps traveling, long after the journey ends. What fueled speculation wasn't proof, but silence. And silence, when paired with grief, has a way of growing louder than facts. At first, there were no warning signs. Long-time viewers went back through Adam's final videos frame by frame, looking for something, anything, that might explain what happened. But they found the opposite. Adam was vibrant, curious, animated in the way only someone deeply in love with their craft can be. Throughout his European trip, his energy never dipped. He joked with strangers, marveled at forgotten buildings, and spoke with that familiar warmth that made millions feel like they were right there beside him. That's why the idea that he passed peacefully in his sleep just hours later felt impossible for many to process. It didn't fit the image they held of him. It didn't fit the story they thought they knew. Police reported no foul play. By all accounts, the scene was calm. Too calm, some felt. An autopsy was delayed. And before answers arrived, the narrative seemed to move on, quickly, toward remembrance and celebration. For fans still struggling to understand, those gaps became spaces where questions echoed. Then came the tribute. Adam's family announced a celebration of life, not a funeral. The message was gentle, carefully worded, and unwaveringly consistent. Almost rehearsed. His father, Jim Williams, opened with Adam's familiar phrase, "Join me, shall you?" For some, it was deeply moving, a loving attempt to keep Adam's spirit alive. For others, it felt surreal, as though Adam's on-screen persona had been carefully woven into the farewell itself. Throughout the memorial, the family described his passing as peaceful and natural, yet avoided mentioning a cause of death. The intention was likely comfort. But the uniform language, repeated again and again, stirred unease among viewers who felt that clarity was being replaced with polish. A retrospective video followed. Bright visuals. Smiling moments. Iconic explorations. It honored Adam's creative legacy beautifully, but barely touched the unanswered questions surrounding his death. Grief, it seemed, was being reshaped into something easier to digest. The family also announced a fund dedicated to preserving historic locations Adam loved. The gesture was widely praised, yet quietly questioned by some who felt the tragedy was being reframed before it was fully understood. As speculation grew, fans began revisiting Adam's life beyond the camera. In 2017, Universal Orlando permanently banned him after he filmed inside the abandoned Nickelodeon studios. Disney later lifted its own ban, but Universal never did. At the time, it seemed like a minor controversy. Looking back, many now see it as a turning point. Adam's early success was built on exploring forgotten, abandoned, and restricted places, spaces that carried mystery and nostalgia. But that same knowledge, that same fearlessness, may have slowly closed doors. Over time, the places he loved became harder to access, and the pressure to keep delivering something new, something unseen, quietly mounted. Off-camera, Adam lived alone. He shared little about romantic relationships. He was always moving, always planning the next trip, the next video, the next story. Daily vlogging for years takes a toll, one that doesn't always show up on camera. Irregular sleep. Fast food between flights. Endless airports. Constant deadlines. Little time to rest, reflect, or recover. Fans once joked about a curse of abandoned places, but those locations carry real risks: dust, mold, asbestos, long-term environmental exposure. Add that to physical exhaustion and the mental weight of always being on, and the picture becomes heavier. None of these factors prove anything. But together, they paint a portrait of accumulated strain, a life lived fully, but relentlessly. And yet, here's the truth that remains undeniable. Adam inspired millions not because he was fearless, but because he was curious. He showed people that forgotten places still matter. That history breathes. That wonder doesn't disappear just because something is abandoned. His story reminds us that passion can light the way, but even the brightest flames need care. It reminds us to slow down, to listen to our bodies, to check in with our souls. To remember that creating meaning for others should never come at the cost of losing ourselves. Adam's journey may have ended quietly, but his impact didn't. It continues in every viewer who looks at an old building and feels curiosity instead of fear. In every creator who chooses authenticity over perfection. In every person who learns that inspiration, once shared, never truly dies. It just keeps traveling.